Hey everyone, I'm Carly. I'm a cross stitcher, a knitter, a natural dyer, and this is my FlossTube. I don't have a ton of stitching to share today, not as much as usual anyway. I mentioned it, I think, in my last video, but I moved. I'm in a new city with new roommates, new pets. One of the cats might try to come in, we'll see. And part of that process, the move itself, very smooth, but settling into a new space, has its different challenges. And part of that has been like finding my stitchy location. I think this is it. The lighting is best here. But I've also just kind of like been in a funk a little bit and wasn't really feeling like stitching or doing anything. But then I cleaned my room and now I feel great. So lesson learned, again, this happens all the time. My physical environment is usually a good representation of what's going on here, and I can sometimes influence what's going on in here by addressing my physical environment. So let me show you some stitching. Cool. So I have a finished object. I think I shared it was my last video. I have a very sweet little group chat of some of my queer friends who very kindly indulge my geeking out on stitching things. And we, throughout the pandemic, have been a support system in a number of ways, but one thing we've done is send snail mail, things that we've made to each other. So one person sent watercolors, her first time watercoloring, and she sent them to us. Another friend taught themselves how to screen print, so now I have a picture of their cat that they made, and things like that. It's my turn again, so I decided to stitch something, obviously. This is a pattern I've shared before. It's called 65 Frogs, and I started stitching it on this bag. I only have a few. I actually bought the pattern with this group chat in mind. We send a lot of frog memes to each other, so I was like, oh my gosh, I can make this bag, and it would be so much fun to be like, look what I made in honor of us. The count of this fabric is too high for my little eyeballs, and it's also not an even weave, so it's like distorts the image. So this is a little bit of a UFO right now. I have some ideas for how I'm going to continue with it, because I would like to finish it. I think it'd be really cool to just have a bag covered in frogs, but for now it's not a priority. In the meantime, I am taking pieces of that pattern and incorporating them into other projects, including this one. So it's just a little letter to my friend. Their name's kind of unique, so I'm going to cover that up. But just says, hey friend, hope all is well with you in New York City, dude. And then I stitched one of the frogs I've already stitched before. And doing it on Ada was so much easier than that silly canvas bag. Yeah, damn. I'm not necessarily using the called for colors in the pattern. I have a box of like unnamed, unnumbered floss from Michaels that I'm using for projects like this, and that's kind of fun too, just like picking and choosing. But yeah, I gotta make one more and send them out, and then my friends will get little stitchy notes from me. I didn't plan the text before writing it. I just started and kind of went from there. So unfortunately, I could not put any exclamation points just because of like how the holes are. It wouldn't work. So that was my one regret, but that's okay. Yeah, so that's my fully finished object of the video. I have a finish for now, which I am going to modify. It's the Talavera linen and thread sampler sal, one of those combinations of phrases and hashtags. This is the August block, this guy, What I'm going to do is take the red out of the center of those hearts and exchange it for this dark blue. And I took a picture of this on my phone and like drew over the red with the blue, and I was like, oh yeah, that looks a lot better. But that's okay. That's what I love about this piece is like I get to make all the decisions, and I mean, you can do that with any piece, but I've really enjoyed trying different threads. If I see something I don't like, I've switched it, and that's been super fun. So that's a change I'll make, and yeah, then it'll be onto the September block, which I've started a little bit here. Oh, and this is stitched on 36 count platinum linen from Picture This Plus, and I'm stitching it 1/2 using Prism. Prism is the brand of floss, which is, I think it's an offshoot of DMC. I don't know. They don't have names or numbers or anything like that, but they're sturdy and I like them. All right. Another whip I've got going on is Winter in My Garden by Mirabilia. This is the pattern, or a picture of the finished product, rather. I talked about this a lot last time, some of the changes I'm planning to make. I also talked about how I had stitched all of the brown in her coat and orange because I got my symbols mixed up. And I did go ahead and fix it. I had thought about waiting till the end, but I didn't. What I did was like pull out a length of that orange, one length at a time, and then stitch it where it actually belonged in the pattern. So mostly on these flower pots and this large pot at the bottom. So yeah, she's coming along. I've got to plant the plants, which will be fun. I haven't decided if I'm going to put the beads in yet. I think I might if I can get a hold of them, just to practice working with beads. But her jacket and her scarf are all done, mostly. Yeah, we got to put in the wording at the bottom and some discarded maps or plans or whatever it is she's making. And yeah, I think I can probably get this done definitely by the end of November, if not sooner. But she's stitched on 32 count raw linen from Witchell, or natural linen, I think. Let me check. Using the called for DMC, and it's 2/2. And it's a natural linen, not raw. Okay, and then I have a new start, and then that's all my stitching. Let's see. Okay. I just want to say I love doing a Prairie Schooler as like a palette cleanser, or just like something to like reignite my stitchy bug whenever I'm kind of feeling a little low. Yeah, this one's been doing it for me. This is Hocus Pocus by the Prairie Schooler, and as per usual, it's those moons with faces, man. They get me. So I started that a few days ago on a 32 count Lugana. It's antique white, I believe. And that's what I have so far. So I've got the border done. That was so fun to do that. And then I've got one of the panels. I think what I'm going to do with this is tea dye it after it's finished. I've tea dyed linen before, Ada, and just soaked it like overnight maybe in some tea, but I want to do this a little more like mottled effect. So I haven't dyed Lugana before, and I might just like scrunch it up and dunk it and move the tea bag around it, and we'll just see what happens. So yeah, I'm excited to try that as well. Okay, and that's all my stitching. I do have a knitting whip to share, and a little bit of news associated with that. So as part of my move to this new city, I wanted to be very intentional about seeking out community before my arrival. Just where I was living beforehand, and like the transportation that I had access to, and the pandemic, it was very isolating. And I wanted to make sure I had people before I got here. So I joined some groups and applied for some things, and now I am not only a member of the local Guild of Hand Weavers, which they also that includes crafters who work with fiber in a number of different ways, not just weaving, but spinning, dyeing, knitting, things like that. I am also an apprentice at a local yarn shop / like community fiber space. So yeah, I just feel like a little medieval lad. Like, I'm a guild member and an apprentice in the capacity that I work with fiber. What? I'm so in love with those titles or descriptors. But as part of my apprenticeship, one of my roles is going to be assisting customers or visitors to the space with their projects. So if they have questions or they need practice with the technique, I got to be able to address that. So I have started trying to relearn terminology for knitting. I used to knit a lot in high school, and I was super active on the website Craftster. Does anyone remember that? It was like before Pinterest. Oh, RIP. It was such a good website. I learned so much from there, and people were just like very chill. Oh my God, I spent hours there. It was kind of like a combo of, I guess, like Pinterest and DeviantArt and Ravelry, in that people shared patterns or instructables. I think that website's still around. That popped up a lot on there too. It was just this amazing crafting community. People did craft swaps, and they did this thing where you would like knit part of a thing and then you would put it in the mail and send it to someone else. I think they were like relays, like knitting relays. Does anyone remember that? I don't know. I didn't participate in anything, but I watched very interestedly as these things took place. Anyway, all that is to say, I used to have a lot more knitting knowledge than I do now. So I'm trying to like pull it out of the dregs of my memories and be able to speak about it. So I just Googled I think different knitting stitches, and found one that I liked, and I've put it into a pattern. So this stitch is called Seafoam Waves. I don't know if that's the generic name for it, or it's just what this website was calling it, and I'll link the website below. They have like 50 different stitches is the list. And you cast on multiples of 10 plus 6, and then you just go. So I cast on and just started going. Yeah, my idea is that I'll make this into a cowl. So I'll just keep knitting it, like it'll get kind of long, and then I'll be able to like join the two ends and it'll like squish down. But I'm using yarn that I dyed naturally. This is actually the first natural dye yarn that I did. I did it at a dye workshop in Washington, D.C. And this was Coreopsis flower. So there was like a dye bath made, which is basically just like water with the thing you're dyeing with. Coreopsis was soaked in there, and so then we dunked our fabric or our yarn in and let that sit for a while, and I think it turned like maybe a yellowy orange. That's usually the color that comes when you're doing natural dye, is like variations of like yellow and brown and sometimes green if you're lucky. But then we dunked it in iron water, and if you change you can use iron water or like white vinegar, lemon juice to shift the pH of your yarn color when you're doing natural dye, and it can make it lighter or darker. So I've played with that a lot, and this was the first time I used it, and I thought it was really cool. So it turned this kind of brown. And then the yellow in here, you can kind of see there's two different shades of yellow. There's like a darker in these first 4 rows, and then it's lighter. That's my turmeric and yellow onion skin that I made at home. I don't remember which one is which one's the lighter one, but this is the yarn I have the most of, is this Coreopsis and then this yellow. It's left over from when I did my natural dye shawl, which is my very first episode. But yeah, what I've been doing, I've been taking this to the park by my house and stitching like about 4 rows each day, and I'm going to do that until somebody posts a misconnection on Lex, and then I will find my crafting wife. Or I'll just do it till it's done, and then I'll start a new project, which is probably what's going to happen. But anyway, it's been fun, like remembering how to do yarn overs and decrease. Well, I haven't had to do decreases yet, but just like reading a pattern is so comforting. I love reading a knitting pattern just because I know what it's talking about. It looks like a bunch of gibberish, but it's like reading a code, like a secret code. I think it feels cool. All right, so that's that. Do I have anything else? I have my former and family finished objects, which I have left on the other side of the room. So pardon me while I fetch those for your viewing pleasure. Okay, so in keeping with the theme of knitting, I have the first pair of socks I made, the last pair of socks I made, and then a pair of socks my mom made. I love to knit socks. I think what's more accurate is that I love to knit tubes, because I've only ever made 3 pairs of socks, but I loved doing it so much. I also used to make arm warmers and leg warmers and like fingerless gloves, mittens. Wait, which one's mittens? The one with fingers. Mittens and gloves. I think gloves have the fingers. Yeah, because fingerless gloves would. Anyway, I used to do that. And yeah, there's something so satisfying about it. So, excuse me, this is my first pair of socks, or just one of the pair. I took a class at a local yarn shop in the place where I grew up with my mom. She had knit some socks previously, but she didn't feel like she could teach me how to do it, which is fine. We had a lot of fun. It was nice to like have an activity together. But yeah, it's a cuff down. So I started at the cuff and knit down and then Kitchener stitched the toe shut. So basically you get to like, you decrease till it gets difficult and then you just like sew it shut. But we modified the pattern so that there's like this honeycomb. I don't know if you can see that very well. The heel is like pretty padded, just to fortify it so you're not ripping it up, because that's the part that tends to get worn out in knit socks, hand knit socks. Yeah, I never really wore these in high school. They weren't very comfortable with the shoes that I had at the time. And these, I guess, let's see, I made these when I was probably around 15 or 16, so they're over 10 years old. And I haven't really ever worn them, which is fine. I love to like look at them and just kind of be super proud of my 16-ish year old self. Like how the hell, what? I turned a heel. I don't know how to do that anymore. I know I'll be able to figure it out, but like, nice going. I think like when I look at old projects I have, I don't have very many of my knitting projects from high school. I've got a lot of pictures, but yeah, I am comforted in that I know what I'm doing. It's in here somewhere. So with this apprenticeship, I know like I can do something like this. Just gotta practice. So I made that same exact pair again for a teacher. I just used a different yarn, and then I was like, all right, I'm ready to graduate. So I made some knee-high lace socks. What? Are you kidding me? And then I modified it just like my teacher taught me, and added the honeycomb heel. But like, damn, good work, Carly. So I was like, again, like 16-ish at the time. And the way that you did the cuff, you can see it's like, you can kind of see. This light is blowing it out. It's like sewed down. You were supposed to like weave a ribbon through and then fold it over and sew it shut so you could like cinch them. And I was like, I'm never going to do that. So I did not. I also have never worn these, but I do like to pull them out and be like, nice. I remember I would have used a lower weight yarn with these. They're kind of thick for this lace pattern, but I remember the problem. I was thinking about it. I was like, I remember being in the yarn shop and looking at dye lots, and like there's an issue. I didn't have the right size needles. And so I was trying to like do the math, like, okay, if I have these size needles, what yarn will work with this? Because I was like, I'm not doing a gauge swatch. Like, who has time for that? A gauge swatch, if you don't know, is how you check your gauge. Like, does your the needle size and the weight of yarn, the thickness of the yarn, basically, are they complementary? Like, are they going to give you the right ratio? And I didn't want to do that, so I just guessed, and I guessed okay. Okay, and now this is my mom's sock. She used to knit socks pretty regularly as well. I don't think this was her first pair, but it's a little different than the one I made. This isn't from the same class that I did with her. You can see she doesn't have that like honeycomb heel, and it's also like tight at the top, and there's no seam at the bottom, so that makes me think she did like a toe up version. So oops, mine was cuffed down. Ugh. And hers is toe up. Not gonna say it. And yeah, I also don't wear these because now I'm like, my mom sucks. I don't want to ruin them. But it's also like, these all have wool in them, so I have to do like a very special load of laundry, and that's kind of annoying. So I think maybe what I'll do is I'll just have to knit a lot more things out of wool, so I will have to more regularly do a load of wool laundry, and that'll justify that. So I do really want to make a sweater. I still with all my heart want to make like a crew neck sweater, and I will one day once I can afford to buy all the yarn needed to do that, but we'll see. Okay, great. Not bad with the timing. I have like a lot of gratitude and just love for the cross stitch community right now. I've actually filmed this video quite a few times, but I've been like, wow, I talk about that too much. It's too long. So if you're, here for stitching and stuff, this is a good time to like head out. Because I'm just gonna like talk to you about how much I love people right now, and that could go on for hours. So yeah, I said I was moving, things were and the one constant I had was FlossTube, and that was just so healthy for my heart and my soul. So thank you everyone who makes floss tubes, who comments, even just like seeing on Instagram people posting cross stitch, like just knowing that like things are still happening even when everything else is happening. There's still like beauty being created and like people taking care of each other in all of these different ways. So specifically, I was hanging up pictures on my wall. There were boxes everywhere. My mom had just left. And I was watching Catherine and Victoria's video. And Catherine was talking about how in that video, like, oh, it's so hard as a parent to leave your child at university or, move or whatever. And I was like, oh, so true. Like, my poor mom, my poor me. So that was happening. And at one point, I also heard my name, and I was like, what? Catherine was delivering a PSA to me, to other people as well, but she was like, so Carly talks about quilting in all of her videos, and then she says how she will never be a quilter. So maybe she should try it, question mark. And she was just so encouraging and empowering. Like, I want to start a quilt today. I wanted to start a quilt a week ago when I watched that video. She's been sending me videos. She's been making videos on how to hand quilt. And I want to do it. I really want to do it. I've looked at sustainable places where I can source my material in the city. Side note, if you have the occasion to take a look, and this might be in larger cities. It might also not be. I don't know. There are stores that are like thrift stores, but for craft supplies. Like, they resell donated craft supplies. So there's one in Richmond, Virginia, where I got a lot of really great material recently called Scrap RVA. I got like skeins of DMC for 10 cents a skein. What? I got like a big bag of fiber that I can spin eventually for like $7. Just like ridiculous markdowns. And it's stuff that like people in your community have given to this space. So I'm trying to find the equivalent in my new city. I think I have, but just watch this space. Quilting may occur. Probably not this year because I got a lot going on, but maybe next year. That'll be my like new year, new start is a quilt. Also, Catherine, I found this when I was unpacking. I bought this like 3 years ago. I think that was even before I was a cross stitcher, and I was like, are you kidding me? This has been on my mind for like 3 years. So this is from the Shelburne Museum in Vermont. Another side note, if you are ever in Vermont, viewers, and it's like at a time where I feel comfortable encouraging you to travel, the Shelburne Museum is fascinating, especially if you're a crafter. They have quilts, they have a dye garden, they have, there is like embroidery. I need to go back because I wasn't a cross stitcher. I feel like they probably have cross stitch and I just didn't really quite know what it was. They have an apothecary, like a preserved apothecary. There's a whole ass boat that they brought onto land. There's a collection of things shaped like ducks. There's a collection of like horse-drawn carriages, miniature wooden circus figurines that would be a mile long if they were to scale. Just like so many things. And one thing they have is a printing press, an old-fashioned printing press where they make like these alphabet posters. And I picked that one for the colors and also, I guess, this like latent desire to be a quilter. Okay, so that's my first like thank you, I love you, I appreciate you. Another person I would like to acknowledge is Dee from Dee's 20 Stitches. Dee sent me a very sweet note saying, if your queer group chat is ever like, what? When it comes to cross-stitching, feel free to message me. And that was so nice. That felt so good. So I would like to extend that to anyone here. If you want to talk about stitching and you don't feel like you have anyone to talk to about it, even if we have never interacted, please. I love to talk about stitching. You can leave me a comment or message me on Instagram. It's great. Dee is also releasing a new pattern coming up with Uncanny Kari. So it's released September 10th, I think it comes out. And it's a Halloween hex collection. It looks very cool, and I've never purchased a pattern, like looked forward to a pattern being released so I could purchase it, but this one I definitely am. And part of the proceeds, at least from the 10th of September through the 10th of October, are going to the Indian Residential School Survivors Society. So that's, yes, thank you. That's amazing. Let me show you the fabric I picked out for this piece because I've already thought about it. I got a grab bag from Color and Cotton a while back, and I never knew what I was going to do with this, but oh my God, look at it. Isn't it so good? Yeah. I don't know if it's going to be big enough to fit everything, but it's fine. It's fine. I'm going to make it work. I'll put at least 2 on here because there's like three little ghosties. I'm so excited. I know what to do with this. Anyway, Dee is releasing that. Dee is amazing. Thank you, Dee. And Kari. Both of you. Mwah. Okay, who else? Oh yeah, Nithya. Duh. There's always Nithya. Nithya released like a 2-hour video recently, just about, and it was exactly what I needed that day. I just needed to sit and stitch and have some familiarity in my life, and there was Nithya providing 2 hours of just that. So thank you. Nithya is also contributing to positive, good, wonderful things in the world, as per usual. And she is participating in the marathon for MMIW, Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women. And I will link her fundraiser in the drop down. And she talks more about it in her video as well. But she's basically throughout, I think, September and October, raising money and awareness for this cause as well through her stitching. So thank you, Nithya, for just being great as per usual. Yeah, something I think I would like to see conversations about in the cross-stitching community, and perhaps these conversations have taken place and I just missed them. I think it's a little challenging to like find that conversation. Like, you can't Google this necessarily. A lot of, I think, our discourse as a community happens through FlossTubes and then like Instagram stories, from what I've noticed. So it kind of like disappears / again, it's difficult to Google it because it's spoken. But we have a lot of patterns that feature Indigenous people, and I strongly suspect the folks that are creating those patterns more often than not aren't Indigenous themselves, and are not depicting folks accurately. I think they are typically caricatures. And that was something that I noticed when I joined the stitching community a year ago, and I was like, it was a little shocking. Like, I think we need to be a little bit more mindful about the kinds of patterns we're putting out and supporting. And I think Dee actually talked about this a bit in their last video about like releasing like patterns that are pride themed, but not being a queer person yourself as the designer, and like profiting off of that. I feel very similarly about these patterns that feature Indigenous people, because there's all of these different fundraisers happening this month, and I'm just curious if this is part of the conversation, particularly in the stitching community, because that's such a common motif. Also, like, Thanksgiving patterns are huge. And they typically depict like things that didn't happen. So I just want to know, are we talking about this? That's what I want to know. That's it. For now. Anyway, okay. Who else? Who else is on my list? Oh, Megan Poco's here. Hi, Megan. Megan's great. She makes me laugh in her videos, and she started watching, so I just wanted to say hi. I think I'm gonna end this here. Maybe not. Okay. I'm hesitating because I learned something really cool from the guild, and I want to share it. So, okay. I'll try to be quick. Basically, the guild had a speaker on Zoom who is really interested in getting flax production for the purpose of creating linen up and running in the United States. I was really interested in attending this talk because of linen being such a big deal in the cross-stitch community. We love this fabric, we stitch on it, and I was always curious like why it was more expensive than the others, because my understanding was that it was the least processed of like Lugana and Jobelan and Ada, and I was like, well, if you're not processing it as much, why so less effort is going into it? Not true. Linen is incredibly labor intensive to produce compared to these other things. It was a super big deal in like Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, particularly. A lot of Celtic people came over, brought the tradition, and it was a thing. And then this kind of goes back to something I was saying in another video about like the history of crafting, the history of America, not learning about things in school. There was this huge push for cotton, and again, like a lot of people who were forced to farm it, linen being a bit more labor intensive, just kind of goodbye. You cannot buy linen manufactured anywhere except Europe these days. There is no commercial grade linen production in the United States. There are a few different groups, pockets around the country, maybe Canada too, and they're all aware of each other. They're kind of trying to bring linen back to America, but even the machinery is like, it's just in Europe, and the cost of bringing it over, no one can really justify it because the scale of production right now is so small that it would just be overkill to even like bring the kind of tractor thing that knocks the flax down. So a lot of people are doing it by hand. So harvesting it, and then there's a process it has to go through where it kind of breaks down. You have to like do all this stuff to it. Very, very specific technical terms. And then you can spin it and weave it and all this great stuff. So yeah, I just thought that was interesting, and maybe one day we will see linen being produced in the United States. But if you recall from this past 18-ish months or so, / even now, supply chain issues and delays, that's because all the linen is coming from just one place, Europe. So I just thought that was interesting. Maybe you do too. I'm gonna go. Thank you for taking some time to spend some time here. I hope you and your people are okay. Take your pick as to what I'm referring to, because that's where we are right now. I hope y'all are safe and taking care of each other, and that's where I'll leave it today. That's the capacity I've got. So I will see you next time. Thank you for being here. Bye.